talking about how, as a father, you are expected to work. It's actually difficult for you to be a father if you don't work, because the child expects you to be giving them the support they require. Children don't work. So it is the father to work so that the child can survive. So fathers and work is an obvious relationship, because how would you call yourself a father and you are not working? Of course, these days you are hearing of people where the wife is the one who works, and the man hardly brings anything. So the wife has to look both after the children and after their father. But we want to emphasize today the fact that God does expect men to be providers. In other words, to work and provide. We will be looking at today at work as a way of worship. Then we'll be looking at work as a way of service. And we'll thirdly be looking at work and the family on the third month, God giving us time. So today we want to talk about the theology of work. What does the Bible say about work? And in the process, we hope will establish that it's expected of every father to actually work. Let me just say, read the introduction as part of this, that work is not voluntary, it's a command. In fact, he says, if you don't work, die. Thessalonians exactly puts it, very good language. If you don't work, don't eat. And obviously, if you don't eat, you will die. It means that we as fathers then would be certainly be disobedient to God. That we are saying work is a way of worship. Why? When you obey God's command to work, you are worshiping Him. You are giving glory to Him. And I think that's something that will be important for us to have at the back of our mind. Number two, work is worship, not just because it's in response to God's command, but like I'll be saying a little later, work is a way of being like God. God worked, we also work. And we are created in His image. Therefore, we are expected to be working. So when you don't work, you are actually not acting like God. Therefore, you are not in worshiping. The chief responsibility of man is to show godliness to God's creation, to manage the creation on behalf of God. So when you talk about worship, what is worship? Worship is telling God He is worthy of respect, worthy of our respect in every way. And when He is worship is worthiness, then we mean that you must do that which will bring glory to God. And the work is what? Laziness and idleness is certainly a way of showing you don't fear God, you don't care about God's intentions. But you know, like I'm saying in my introduction, it's God who has actually given us work. But unfortunately, the average person doesn't think like that. The average person, his understanding of work is he works so that he can earn a living. So where does God come in? My job is to earn a living. Unfortunately, if you only work to earn a living, then chances are within a short time you'll earn enough, especially those who are very gifted and are have gifts that are in high demand. Within a short time, you'll earn enough money to actually last the rest of your lifetime. So if you are working only to earn a living, then you would not need to work many years. And that's why some people even talk about you work for until you're age 40, then after that, what? But God's instructions are if you don't work, don't eat. So there's no time when you're expected to stop working if you want to work in obedience to God. So this idea of thinking you work only to earn a living is not a way of respecting what God's instructions. Another one says, I work so that I can take care of my family. Again, that partly true. But how long do you have your family? For me and my age mate in our 70s, You don't see the family around you. And if God blesses them and they are looking after themselves, obviously, then why will you work? And that's why you find some people become idle after their children become adults. They become dependent and they end up becoming drunkards because they had the wrong idea about work. They thought they work in order to look after their family. So once the family is now in adulthood, they just idle. And it's Gatere, the late Gatere, who said, with that kind of concept, you normally will be dead within 3 years after retirement. And those days, the retirement was 55. He was saying the average retirees die by 57, 58. They are dead. With the wrong, if your concept of work is simply to look after your family, then once your family is, and they become adults very early, in the sense that last Sunday I was speaking at Southeastern University, and and I was telling them I was in the Bible study coordinator of the CU over 50 years ago, and of course mentioning their parents who are not born. So what does that tell you? By the time you are 50, 51, 52, you have actually finished your job of looking after your family. So what do? Some others say that they work so that they make money. In other words, and those ones at least are likely to work for a long time. But then sometimes your money will start doing. You have even heard of that poor dad saying that you reach a level where your money will do the working. So what do? Become idle. And idle hands and idle minds at the devil's workshop. That's what happened to David. Once he was so successful at the time of war, he stayed at home. And that's how he ended up seeing a woman called the wife, Mrs. Uriah. And he ended up destroying the rest of his life was in a lot of trouble because he thought he had actually succeeded and conquered. My friend, that's not a good reason. You know, most of us, if this is a concept we have, the emphasis is usually on time spent in exchange for monetary reward. That's what we have in mind. I do this, I get this. That's what we are really talking about. But some others look at it differently. They look at work as a necessary evil. In other words, their choice would have been to be idle and do nothing. But now that they have to earn a living, then they say it's a necessary evil. They look at work as a necessary evil. But work is not evil. If it's going to be a worship of God, worship means doing something God that pleases God, then it cannot be evil. You know, some other people just think it's a way of occupying our time, to occupy us until retirement. Then what happens in retirement? You know, the word retirement is not a biblical word. You're expected to work until your body does not allow you to work anymore. Employment, yes, you retire from employment. Work, you don't ever retire from work. Sometimes it may even appear meaningless. This idea of work is meaningless and laborious. So we keep yearning, when shall we stop? When shall we retire? So that we can pass time in leisurely pursuits. If that is what you have in mind, then you don't have the idea of work as worship. Let me say a few more things, still talking about the workplace. You wake up every morning and you feel like getting a headache. Why? The place is stressful. Why is it stressful? Because you have the wrong reason for working. You become very stressed. I wish I had enough time, but I've written quite a bit. All I'm saying are in my book, A Leader's Work Ethics. So if you're able to contact Scripture Union, my distributor, or go to Amazon and you can get a digital copy from Amazon, or go to my website and there's some free material on work. If you check my materials in my website is www.johngaga.org. You'll see I've spent a bit of time. But work is not supposed to be stressful. When you see what you are doing, you are serving the Lord, There'll be challenges at work, but you know God is with you. You know, part of the reason why it is stressful is because there's too much politics in the workplace. And you become part of it. Some of those terms they use is backstabbing. What is backstabbing? You smile to the person, then when you go to the boss, you tell him this guy should be fired. Yet you are his friend. And that can get very stressful. But when you realize that you are working to honor God, you know that He protects your back. Some others, because of desiring to get promotion, they get involved in bootlicking. What is bootlicking? It is beyond doing your assignment, is trying to do good things to the boss so that he can turn his eye to you and give you promotion. It's called bootlicking. A Christian can't do that because he knows promotion either comes from the east or from the west. It comes from the Lord. So as he works, he has at the back of his mind the fact that he is serving the Lord. That is Colossians chapter 3, verse 23. Also, this idea of blame games. Oh, this so and so gave me trouble. We Christians find it easy to admit where they are wrong and ask for forgiveness. They are also not involved in competition. One of the worst things that happens at work is comparison and competition. Why can't you work and compete against yourself rather than compete against others? In other words, every day you must be sure you did what honors God. And whether people think you are doing great or not, the important thing is, did you do your very best? It doesn't bother you how others are performing if you know you did your very best. Even if you don't get promotion, you are still aware that God will give you promotion at the right time. So you are not involved in competition that creates the stress at the place of work. Sometimes you have so much pressure to deliver and to succeed. And all of it has to do with because you are looking at human beings as the one you are working for. And of course, that whole issue about competition for top places in the pyramid, because the pyramid gets narrower and narrower. So pressure and stress become worse and worse until work is all consuming and you start forgetting everything else. You forget your family, you forget your wife, you forget your parents. You have no time for them because it's all consuming. All because you have the wrong idea about work. So don't bring yourself to end up with the medical issues because of having the wrong view of work. Let me quote somebody called Schumacher. He says, by the way, Schumacher, E.F. Schumacher is the author of Good Work and Small is Beautiful, a study of economics as if people matter, is what the book is called. I quote, if for an employer, work is simply an item of cost to be reduced to a minimum, if it cannot be eliminated altogether by automation, for the workman to work is to make a sacrifice of one's leisure and comfort, and wages are kind of compensation for the sacrifice. Whether you are looking at the employer's angle or from employee angle, that is not, you don't go to work as an act of worship when that's what you have in mind. So we need, in order for work to be worship, work objective should be go beyond what I get for myself to where how it pleases God. Let me quote Alexander Hubbard. To enable him to overcome his ego-centeredness by joining, people go to work as a means to develop themselves as persons, to serve others, to find a sense of meaning in their work. In other words, here, Alexander is actually saying that we don't just go to work to earn money, but in order to have opportunity to develop yourself, yes, that's for you, but in order to serve others, that's what is making you. And when you start turning to work as a way of serving others, that's what worship is all about. Or back to Schumacher, work is a way to enable you to overcome your ego-centeredness by joining with other people as a common task. In other words, work gives you opportunity to see yourself as a part of a wider group, and therefore have less self-centeredness. You know, the best organization to be in, I guess, are the busiest ones, like Mr. Hardy says, as long as they are busy for someone else. The worst are those that are obsessed with their own innards. In other words, the good place to work is where they are not thinking about the shareholders' profit alone. They are thinking about serving the customers and serving the staff. We all, it seems, need a purpose beyond ourselves to make the best of ourselves. So the notion of service is the notion of worship. The Buddhist view takes the function of work to be at least threefold, according to Buddha. Number one, to give a man a chance to utilize and develop his faculties. Number two, to enable him to overcome his ego-centeredness by joining with other people, like we saw earlier. Number three, to bring forth the goods and services needed for a becoming existence. That's what Buddha would say. And once one accepted that man was created by God with a designated purpose, the politics, economics, and art had value only for the end of helping man reach a higher plan of existence, which should be his goal. So once you start seeing God in your work, then you see work as a means of worshiping him. You know, mature human beings seek not only a decent salary and an interesting things to do, but also, number one, the means to develop themselves as persons. You want to be what God created you to be, to his glory. You want your life to count, to make an impact in serving others. And you want, therefore, in the process, to find meaning in your work. I've given this story before. From the time I had it, I have repeated many times about this guy. If you know something about Europe, the old big buildings are all to do with cathedrals, because Europe was being run by the Pope. So any building you're talking about 500 years ago, the best building would always be a cathedral. So there is this tourist who went at a time when a cathedral was being built. And there used to be maybe one cathedral per country. And he went to the big structure. So he went to one corner and found a mason, somebody, a bricklayer, and asked him, "What are you doing?" Obviously, they could see what he was doing. The bricklayer just did not even look up. He just said, "I'm just laying bricks," because he was actually putting one brick on top of another. Can you imagine if that is your view of work, just putting one brick on top of another? When you woke up in the morning, would you be in a hurry to go to work? These are the people who are only working for money to meet their needs. There's no excitement in the work. If it's going to be worship, it must go beyond just laying bricks to finding out, what are you laying bricks about? Anyway, this guy went to another corner and found another bricklayer or mason and asked him, "What are you doing?" This one stopped working, stood up and looked at him and says, "I am building a cathedral." Can you see the difference between bricklayer 1 and 2? Bricklayer 1 does not think about the totality of what he's doing. He just thinks about one brick on top of the other. The next one is already getting excited by the fact that he'll be telling his grandchildren, "Do you see that cathedral? I was a part of it. I helped to build that cathedral." He is looking forward to enjoying his old age after the cathedral is actually completed. Can you see him waking up in the morning excited, and not even patient enough for the completion of the cathedral. He wants to do and work as fast as possible to ensure the cathedral is complete, because he's looking at it. If we are going to look at work as worship, we must not do work that has no meaning. We must do work that is going to bring something that will be meaningful. That's why it's not enough to just work. For example, when I left campus, 50 years less, I think, less than about 2.5 years remaining to make 50 years since I left campus. I remember being in the Faculty of Commerce as a notes board, and they were advertising jobs, many. But the one that were highest paying, it was BRAs and BAT. And I still remember a non-Christian finding me looking at the breweries one. He said, Nganga, what are you doing? It's not for you. And he's a non-Christian, but he knew I should not be looking at the breweries job, although it's one paying more. Why? He had seen me for the whole university life talking about him, about Christ, and about wanting to worship God. So that's not the job that can help you. That's why a Christian does not do a job just because it brings money. Money, yes. Like you hear some people who work for breweries will tell you, me, I'm an accountant. Not understanding the reason you are doing accounting is so that more beer can be sold. Yeah, there is a reason for accounting is so that you can increase in volumes. A friend of mine used to be the sales manager, and then he got saved, deputy sales manager, then he got saved. And then what would happen is that on the weekend, he is busy telling people to get born again and stop drinking. For the other 5-6 days, those days you used to work for 6 days, he is busy telling people or looking for strategies and pushing his salesmen to sell more alcohol. One day he just looked at it and wait a minute. I know I'm earning a lot as a deputy sales manager, but I can't, the conflict within me is impossible. I can't do this anymore. So he went to the boss and said, I'm resigning. He said, for what? My conscience can allow me to work here. So where are you going? I have no idea. I have no job. All I know, I cannot work here. Please, this is my notice. This is my notice letter. So he gave his notice without knowing where he was going, trusting God to provide for him. But before he left the company, he tells me, he finally got another sales manager's job with a cosmetic company where he would be able to say, I'm helping to make God's women beautiful. So you need to understand that if you are really going to have a work as worship, it is not the money you are getting. It is what you're doing daily. How is it benefiting God's people? How is it benefiting God's people? This guy thought, wow, I'm Peter Cathedral. He saw the completeness. My job, that job, the other job, we are all working to complete a cathedral. What are you doing, however small? How is it up to them? What's the reason for your business? What's the reason for your place of employment? Why does it exist? If the reason it exists is not something you can align with, then you cannot be a worshiper and stay there. But anyway, that was the second guy. The tourist moved to the third guy. When he moved to the third guy, he asked him, same question, what are you doing? This one stood up, started smiling, and he says, I'm depopulating hell, I'm populating heaven. In other words, this guy did not just hear cathedral. He saw the bishop behind the pulpit telling people to trust in God. And he felt that it is his laying of the bricks that will help the cathedral to be complete and people to go to heaven. He saw himself as an evangelist, yet he's only laying bricks. Let me ask you, do you see your work as having benefit to the people on earth, but in a way, using that same work as a way of helping people to go to heaven? In which way? You know, let's be clear. According to the book of Acts, chapter 1, verse 8, all of us are commissioned. If you are to worship as a Christian, one requirement is you ask the Holy Spirit to come into you. When he comes to you, Acts 1:8, you become a witness. An evangelist, that a calling. Witness is for every Christian. Just look at Acts 1:8, and then look at verse 15. The people became witnesses who are not just the 12 apostles. There were 120 of them. So it means that if you are going to take work as worship, then you must see yourself as a witness in your workplace. Yes, how do you witness? Not by during office hours, going to preach during office hours. It's by the way you do your job. And people start saying, how come you work like this? How come you are treated badly yet you continue working? In answering the question, you start witnessing. But the witness was provoked by the way you work. In addition to utilizing the opportunities to reach out to your contact with the gospel. Because once you do a good job, you gain friends, you gain contacts. Then outside office hours, you become a witness. So your work becomes a worship because it's the work that is opening opportunities. Your work as an auditor, engineer, doctor should assist rather than hinder your witness. And that's why very few of us should be pastors. Most of us should do other things other than pastoring so that our job becomes a vehicle for witness. That's how you become a witness. And I'll be referring to this again when I talk about serving. But the question we really need to answer is work a curse? Is work a curse? And that's a very important thing to answer. I'll be allowing time for discussion. Those will not take forever. Look at Genesis chapter 3, verse 17. To Adam, he said, because you listened to your wife and ate from the tree about which I commanded you, you must not eat from it. Cursed is the ground because of you. Through painful toil, you will eat food from it all the days of your life. It will produce thorns and thistles for you, and you'll eat the plants of the field. By the sweat of your brow, you'll eat your food until you return to the ground. Since from it you are taken, for dust you are, and to dust you will return. That is a passage used in order to call work a curse. But please understand, yes, the ground has been cursed. But is that where work began? Go back to chapter 2, before the fall of man. And we read in verse 15, and the Lord God took the man, Adam, and put him in the Garden of Eden. To do what? To do work in it and take care of it. In other words, work was ordained before the fall. Some people think that if man had not fallen, there would be no work. But please read clearly. Before the fall, man was already working in the garden. What happened is after the fall, the work was made more difficult. But working is God created man with the capacity to work. So when you talk about work as worship, it is doing what God created you to do, and he created you to work. Let me repeat. Man was created with a creative nature because he is created by God. So when a man does not work, because what is to work? To work is to modify what God has already created. If it is a seed, you are able to farm it and you can produce more potatoes, whatever. But basically, it's God who has created the potatoes. God is a creator. Because you are created in God's image, to worship God means, like him, to look around your environment and see how you can multiply the things God has created. That's why you cannot enjoy your life if you have no opportunity to do things that help to improve your surroundings. Man or woman only feels fulfilled when he works. What does he do in working? To change things, to be creative. And you need to see that the best job you can do is a job that is not just monotonous. It gives you opportunity to think, opportunity to improve things, opportunity to increase production. That's what you are created for. And you can see, even before the fall, that was already happening. And you need to come to where you start seeing work as God ordained. God works to get fulfillment, not just to earn money. In other words, God's people work in order to get fulfillment, not just to earn money. Of course, you get money in the process, because when you are meeting people's needs, they want to pay you because you have met their needs. But what excites you more is the fact that you have met their needs. That's what God has put in us. What excites us is to do things that become useful to others. That's why we work. Not the other reasons I saw earlier. Those follow, but they are the smaller items. The main reason we work is because God has created us with the capacity to work, with the capacity to be creative. And when we do, we end up, in the evening, we are tired, but happy. We sleep happily because of the things we actually did. That's why you need to do work where you feel you are using your creative capacity, and that you are doing things that will help improve what God has created, and it's actually useful to others. Man was created with a creative nature, I've just said. That's why he only fulfills when he works. So, my brother, do you work to get fulfillment, or you just work for money? In Matthew chapter 25, the story of the talents, we learn that the talented people were blessed, not for the amount of work they did, but because they were faithful in what they did. In other words, God, and please look at verse 21 and then verse 23 of Matthew chapter 25. You'll see the guy who came with the 10, the one who came with the 4, all of them got the same commendation. Well done, good and faithful servant. So you need to understand, God is not looking at, I produce more than you, I got a better grade more than you. He is looking at, but was I faithful? In other words, if you talk to the student world, I got a B+. You only got a C+. But God may be saying, the reason you got a B+ is because you are lazy. Should have gotten an A. So he is happy with me a C+, because he's not looking at the output as much as he's looking at, was I faithful? Did I do my best? Did I apply my brain? Faithfulness to your mission, diligence should concern you more than output. For output follows how faithful you are to what God has called you and the gifts God has given you. What are we saying? Both the means at the end matter to God, not just the end. Oh, I'm rich. How did you get the riches? Oh, I got an A. How did you get an A? If work is to be worshipped, it means that the means you followed are means that honored God, even as the output honored God. God blesses the work of our hands. He doesn't bless conmen, where you are playing games in order to make money. Worship means you earned a living. You did not get free money. You actually worked and made a difference for people, and that's why they are paying. Just before I finish, I want to talk about the Protestant work ethics. Max Weber, the German economic sociologist, coined the term for the new beliefs about work, calling it the Protestant work ethic. It is claimed, in fact, you can research on this one, that theology of work that the Protestants, Calvin, Luther, the Protestants got into, changed the world. You see, when you go to North America, the people who went there, they were what we call Puritans. These were people who are not accepting the Catholic faith. They wanted to follow the Bible. So they went there with a new theology of work. And the key elements of this theology was diligence, punctuality, deferment of gratification, and primacy of the work domain. Let's start with diligence. In other words, if you want to talk about work as a worship, then you have to follow the scriptures. And what is diligence? A zealous and careful nature in one's actions and work, exemplified by a decisive work ethic and being careful about how you use your time and monitoring one's own activities to guard against any level of laziness. Then putting forth full concentration in your work. That's what you mean by diligence. So it means that if work is worship, you don't work because your boss is supervising you. You work, the motivation is from within. You don't require external motivation because from within, you know God is with you. You are grateful God gave you the job. You will do your very, very best with diligence. And I think that's one of the things that to, by the way, if I not run out of time, we could spend a bit of time here. Are you aware there are more verses against laziness or than against drunkenness? The Bible is totally against laziness. Laziness is a way of not worshiping God. Diligence and working hard, putting your best, is actually a way of worshiping God. That's what the Protestants said. So when you go to work, you don't wait for your supervisor because you are doing it for God. So you do your very best. That made a difference when they started working. And that's why we are told, because South America was occupied by the nations where the Puritans had not come from. South America, that's why it's called Latin America, it was purely generally Catholic. North America was generally speaking Protestant. And that's why today, North America is the first world, South America is the third world. Yet both parties had come from Europe. Just theology alone, taking work as worship. And because it's worship, you work hard to please God. Even if the boss doesn't recognize your work, you are doing it. And of course, productivity becomes higher. The other thing they said is that if you truly are using work as a way of worship, you must be careful about time, punctuality. Punctuality is the characteristics of being able to complete a required task or fulfill an obligation before or at a previously designated time. Punctual is often used with synonymously with on time. So according to them, if there is a time for planting, you plant on time before the rains come. If there's time for harvesting, you harvest on time. Punctuality to the glory of God. So of course now in Africa we talk about the idea of African time. You can see why we would get our poverty, because the biblical idea is time cannot be wasted by somebody worshiping God. Look at Ecclesiastes 5:4. When you make a vow to God, do not be late in paying it, for he takes no delight in fools. Pay what you vow. In other words, keeping time, doing what you have said you do it. If you're employed and you have signed a job contract, do what the job contract says. Better surpass the requirements than go below it. So on time, keeping time. Isaiah 25:18. And of course, you know Abigail. She later became the wife of David. Abigail lost no time. She took 200 loaves of bread, 2 skins of wine, 5 dressed sheep, 5 seahs of roasted grain, 100 cakes of raisins, and 200 cakes of fresh wheat, and loaded them on donkey. What was he doing? The army of David was coming to destroy her husband. And the intention is they are going to kill all male. because her husband was a fool. But because she acted on time, because if she had, in fact, David tells her, if you had not come on time, all of people would be them. Time. Sometimes we feel like I'll do it tomorrow. But what's the difference between doing it today and tomorrow? I can wait until tomorrow. The theology of the Protestants was things must be done on time. And when you don't do them on time, it's not your boss, it's God unhappy. Because they saw punctuality as a way of worship. In cultures which value punctuality, being late is tantamount to showing disrespect for another's time and may be considered actually insulting. In such cases, punctuality may be enforced by social penalties, for example, by excluding low status latecomers from meetings entirely. Such considerations can lead on to considering the value of punctuality in econometrics and considering the effects of non-punctuality on others in queuing theory. In other words, you can study the issue. But it's a pity that even in Christian meetings, people come late. Somebody is coming 1 hour late and laughing, not apologizing, not crying. These people say, no, punctuality is biblically required. Do things on time. And of course, if you are doing your due diligence, you're working hard and efficiently, if you are doing them on time, can you see clearly that your productivity will go up? Thirdly, they said that the biblical thing is to defer gratification. Don't try to get now everything. So in the end, you don't have productivity. That's why when you harvest your maize, part of the maize will become the seed so that you can plant a bigger area. You defer gratification. In other words, you still want to gain out of your work, but you don't end up with everything. You know, in economics, they talk about marginal propensity to consume, where whatever you produce, if your MPC is 1, you finish it. You have nothing else you don't save anything. They say, no. Saving is biblical. Don't just produce and eat everything. Plan how to grow the whatever it is you are producing. Increase the volume. Look at 1 Samuel 10:8. Go down ahead of me to Gilgal. This is the prophet saying, Samuel, I'll surely come down to you to sacrifice burnt offering and fellowship offerings, but you must wait 7 days until I come to you and tell you what you are to do. Did King Saul, did he do it? No. And he ended up losing his kingdom. Lack of timekeeping or doing things at the right time, not earlier, not late, doing them at the right time can actually cost you the kingdom of God. Look at Proverbs 30, verse 25. Ants are creatures of little strength, yet they store up their food in the summer. Remember, deferring gratification means not consuming everything, saving something for the future, and therefore growing your volume. Ants are like that. During the summer, they are busy, but they don't consume everything they got during summer. They go and store it. So during winter, they have something. So my friend, if you have no savings at all as a father, so that when your child ends up in the university, you say, I have no money. But you had 20 years before he entered university, and you could have been saving little by little. If you are saving 100 shillings for 20 years, with the compound interest, it will be enough to take the child to school for the 4 years of the university. But you have to be better than the ant. You must use the working life in order not to consume everything. Save something. And you don't save because you have enough. You save as a principle. You don't save because you have excess. You save as a principle that I cannot use everything. I must defer my gratification. That means you may even need to lower your standard of living so that you are still saving. Saving was made a theologically required thing by the Puritans. Deferred gratification. And of course, you can see what that would do. You know, deferring gratification has been perceived as both a significant influence on child development and as an explanation of middle class hegemony. The demand for instant gratification is seen as a sign of immaturity and is believed to account for the limited upward mobility of those with their origins in the working class. This is a book by Founder Block and Block, 1983. And how much you would have to agree with it, that the poor condemn themselves to continuous poverty because they don't follow that principle of saving. It seems reasonable to suggest that those who invest in their futures, either by saving their financial resources or by engaging in protracted periods of education, are more likely to be achievers and to be successful longer term. So as a father, you must help your family to operate at a lower level so you have savings, and in the process, because you deferred gratification, at a later time, the family will live better and you will grow your wealth. That's what I think what they are talking about. The final one is what they said as part of this work ethic. It's primacy of the work domain to fight dependency. In other words, work was seen as important as evangelism, as joining the choir, as, in other words, you don't serve the Lord only on Sunday. You serve the Lord from Monday to Saturday, you are still serving the Lord because God created us to work. Look at 1 Thessalonians 4:11. Make it your ambition to lead a quiet life, to mind your own business, and to work with your hands, just as we told you, so that your daily life may win the respect of outsiders and so that you will not be dependent on anybody. Next month, we'll still look at this verse, but please look at the beginning of the verse and the end. Make it your ambition. Now go to the final portion, not to be dependent on anybody. That's what primacy of work was, that everybody wants to work. They don't want to get free things from others. As a culture, we in Kenya, people want to get things. That's why you find somebody whose child was in Makini, paying maybe I don't know how much per term in primary school. When they want to go to university, they pretend they can't afford and will ask a harambe. And the argument is, I've been giving other people, let them also give me. We do not seem to hate dependency on others. These people say primacy of work as a domain to fight dependency was taken very seriously. Now, when you do not want to depend on others, you can't be lazy because you are, of course, sometimes comes when you may need to be helped. You may be sick. People have to raise funds for your medical bills. You may have had an accident, but in your heart, even when you are being helped, you hate it. You don't want to be helped because inside you, you see God as having created you to give to others, not to yourself. Just look at this. Make it your ambition not to be dependent on anybody. Instead, lead a quiet life, mind your own business, work with your own hands. That's really what work is all about. If the instruction says to depend, make work your way of meeting your needs, the needs of your wife, and the needs of your family. That way, you honor God. Because dependency will not bring glory to God. The benefactor can hardly listen to the beneficiary in preaching. If I'm the one meeting your needs, and then you turn around and say, please accept Jesus as your Lord and Savior, there is a challenge communicating. And anyway, you don't want to hurt him, otherwise he'll stop helping you. So you need to get where you and your family and your children, God is blessing you by blessing the work of your hands. And when I say your hands, not just the man and the woman, because the woman was given as an assistant. So he has to assist you even in working. Hard work allows people the opportunity of the heavenly rewards. Work has value beyond subsistence. Is what they were saying when they talk about primacy of work. It is that work has value beyond subsistence. Concept has changed though the industrial revolution, where hard work didn't necessarily mean advancement or other rewards, and into the dawn of the information age, where social scientists realize work is about more than money. And I think that will be something important. I have taken longer than I wanted, but let me say 4 things. That work is commanded, and because it's commanded, if we work in order to glorify God by obeying his instruction. Number 2, work meets an inborn need in us. We are created as creators, and therefore working helps us to have a sense of fulfillment. If somebody was to ask you, and I've given this example before, saying, how much are you earning per month? 100,000. I want to pay you 100,000 per year, means maybe something like you're earning about $1 million per year. And how long are you going to work? To the age of 60? I'm remaining another 25 years. So it'd be 25 million. Then I'm going to put that $1 million into your bank account, but sign here, you will never do any work until the day of retirement. A few of us would actually take it. But if you actually took the money, you don't have to be idle for the next 25 years. You are likely to die early, because created in us is a desire to work. And you only need to be on holiday for 1, 2, 3 weeks. But the third week, you feel you need to be where you can contribute. It is an inner thing. So in worship, we were created to work, and so it will be important to work. Now, thirdly, work is, and meeting our own needs is a method like the verse we have just read, so that your daily life after you have worked, that's 1 Thessalonians 4:12, so that your daily life may win the respect of outsiders. Work is a way of evangelism. Evangelism because people can see how you're working, according to 1 Thessalonians 4:12. But evangelism because when you are not dependent on them, it's easier to actually preach to them. And finally, I think it will be important for us to know work is worship, because God hates laziness. In hell, there will be drunkards, there will be immoral people, but there will also be lazy people. We are not living a life of worship when we are not meeting our needs on the basis of working our own hands, but instead we are depending on others. Thank you. Let's now allow the next 20 minutes a discussion.
Thank you very much, John. Yeah, that is quite deep and refreshing. Yes, very, very sobering discussion there. I want to see whether there is there's a question. Let me read it out for you. And please keep any questions coming. If you want to ask verbally, you can lift your hand. I will be able to see it using the technology available. But you can also chat it, and I will read it out for Elder John to answer. I can see one here. How does one in full-time ministry fit in, quote unquote, the concept of work? Can raising support fit into work? Elder, I hope you understand the question. You're muted if you're trying to talk, or probably he's catching a
Okay,
cup of water
sorry.
or something.
Sorry. I was talking. How,
Okay.
and I'm trying to answer the question.
Mm-hmm.
How does one in full-time ministry fit in the concept of work? Can raising support fit into it? Number one, I don't agree with the idea of full-time ministry, because I've just spent time showing you engineers are in full-time ministry, because engineering is serving the Lord. What is serving the Lord? Serving the Lord is doing what honors God and benefits man. I repeat, what is serving the Lord? Doing what benefits man to the glory of God. And when you do engineering, for example, somebody is building a house, you are a structural engineer, and you help him to make a building that will not fall. That is ministry. That is worship. That is serving God. But similarly, when you are involved in evangelism, you are doing something that honors God and something that benefits man, because you are trying to help people with a need. The engineer is helping him with the need of a building. You are helping him with a spiritual need. Both of you are working. Nobody is doing better than the other. However, if you are talking about some other people, because you are not earning money, because although generally speaking, according to the scriptures, the church should be supporting you. How does the church support you? We are supposed to tithe. According to the New Testament, we are supposed to remember those who work among us. We are supposed to tithe, or if not the word tithe, give, according to the New Testament. Then out of that, it meets the needs of those who work in the church. So it means that you need to understand that when you work and the church supports you, or God's people support you, they are partnering with you. Fundraising itself is not work. It is asking people to partner with you. It is the evangelism, winning people to the Lord, that is the work. So I hope I'm able to clarify that whether you are witnessing to people to get saved, and you are doing that all the time, and I'm doing engineering, both of us are serving the Lord. And even the one who is an engineer, I said, the final result is that those people, after you have made their building, should get to know Jesus long term. Thank you.
Thank you. It's very clear, Elder. Actually, someone says it's not necessarily being in full-time ministry, but in being in ministry full-time. Being in ministry full-time, and that's really what is crucial. That whatever profession, whatever, it's our vocation, and therefore, and I love that whatever brings honor to God and good to men is work, that is worship. Thank you very much. And I think, like you said earlier, the three builders of the cathedral, one is simply laying bricks, another can see a bit of the vision, the cathedral, but even greater is to be able to see the kingdom perspective in my daily engagement. Anyone else with a question before I ask one or two other elders to make a comment? You can lift your hand, by the way. I will see it. Or if you can't see the place you should lift hand, you can just unmute and ask your question. We have a few minutes before we pray.
And I left the time because I thought this thing is better in discussion. So
true.
Don't make me feel like I should have gone on.
Yeah, no, definitely we were enjoying the deep insights, but like you say, questions also help to reflect and for feedback. All right, guys, who wants to come in?
Tony, I had put a question.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Question of what makes legitimate and illegitimate work a very common issue, especially where you're working in controversial, workplaces. Some Christians will be very categorical. Others think that they saw a place for witness. I would like to hear Eda Nganga's reflection on that matter.
All right.
Sebas,
Yeah,
I can only repeat myself because I already covered it when I gave the example of a guy in breweries. And I gave you my friend who was senior there. Let's come out clear. Remember Colossians, and I cover this also in my book, The Christian Professional in the Marketplace. Colossians 3:17, whatever you do it as unto the Lord, not working for man, working for God. So if you cannot see God instructing you to do something, obviously you cannot work there. If you can't see God asking you to make cigarettes with a label out there telling people it will give you cancer, then obviously you can't work there. A lot of people who work there, they work there because they are desperate for money. The question is, can God give a different job? Like the guy 20-something, 26 years ago who told me, or 27 years ago, who told me, you can't work there. But God gave me another job, and all these many years, he has kept providing for me. So the first thing, Cephas, is to understand you cannot bribe God. In other words, you go do drug trafficking, then you give a big tithe, and you say to the glory of God. The Old Testament talks about it, says that money that has come out of prostitution cannot be given in the temple. And it therefore means you cannot work in wrong places as a way of doing something. Similarly, you cannot go doing something that dishonors God in order to witness. There are ways. Those same people who are working in BAT are neighbors to Christians. They are relatives of Christians. You can actually reach them. You don't have to be doing something. And when you argue like that, a lot of people will do wrong things. It's a way like you start getting involved in prostitution so that you help prostitutes to get born again. Now that concept is not on. However, let me admit, there is a Christian fellowship in BAT, there's a Christian fellowship, whatever, because some people went there before they were born again. Then they get saved. If they are saved, you must disciple them enough for them to trust God to give them jobs elsewhere. So you cannot condemn the person just then. But for a person who is a Christian, who trusts in the Lord, to apply for a job in a place where Colossians 3:17 cannot apply, because he is going to witness, that is calling God a beggar, that God doesn't know how to reach out to people. So it's a matter we need to be aware of. Before you talk about money, does that job benefit man? Number two, does it bring glory to God? If not, then you're not taking work as worship.
Thank you, John. Pastor Silas, come in. You can see your hand is up.
Thank you so much, Undan John, and thank you, Tony, for the chance. I tend to think this is one of the greatest area we should further investigate and understand, because everybody is involved in some work in one way or the other. And now, because most of our time actually we spend working, it is of paramount importance to be discipled thoroughly in that area so that we'll be able to honor God. Because if we remove the time we use for work from our daily lives, you are left with very little. If the time you worship God is on Sunday, or when we have a Bible study or a prayer meeting, then most of the time we are pagans. until those moments come. And therefore, we should take it so seriously. And even if we are tricked the way we have been viewing before, I think the need requires a thorough commitment to be discipled in the area of work, so that truly we may worship the Lord. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Boroki. I think I saw another question, Elder John, on the place of theological training for those who serve the Lord, but in the marketplace. Is it something to encourage, and to what extent is that necessary? Do you want to?
Obviously, you cannot be a Christian and not be a Bible student. Because remember, we have agreed you are building a cathedral, but more important, your job should help you to depopulate hell and populate heaven. You'll be asked questions at work that you can't answer. So it is in your interest to learn theology. You may need to go to a Bible school if you can, and these days they're available in the evenings. But the more you know, the better for you as a witness. However, we do not want to imply in any way that people who have not studied theology are not witnesses of the Lord. Many evangelists are not where they can. If you go to Billy Graham, he had a first degree, he didn't do others, but his books are the ones studied by people doing PhD. The critical thing here, the basic knowledge of the Bible, he applied it for 60 years, serving the Lord. So let's be clear. You cannot be somebody who will serve the Lord without increasing your knowledge of the Bible. You must be a Bible student. Number two, if you can't go to Bible school, you still can serve the Lord. But if you're able to do Bible, it will help you to be better sharpened. But you can study on your own. Like, for example, I'm one example, right from campus. I started buying concordances and commentaries because I was getting invitation continuously. And the kind of topic the universities are giving me, I have no idea. I'm a permanent student. Okay, I have to admit, after I retired, I did some theology at International Leadership University, but I had already been preaching for many, many years. So I think it's important to know that the commitment was, I wanted to know as much as possible. By the time I was doing some theology, they told me to buy books. I say, they're already in my library. Oh, that one, it's also in my library. The books were telling me to buy were already in my library because I was committed to learning more. You cannot be a witness of God with minimum knowledge. You want to know more and more. I hope I've answered the question.